Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Anashtake. Hare Krishna to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Continuing reading from Canto 3, Chapter 3, the Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, text 15. When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication, where their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear, otherwise it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. Text 16. Lord Sri Krishna, thus thinking to himself, established Maharaj Yudhisthira in the position of supreme control of the world in order to show the ideal of administration on the part of piety. Text 17. The embryo of Puru's descendant, begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord. Text 18. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices, and Maharaj Yudhisthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Text 19. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Text 20. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle, sweetly smiling face, his nectarian words, and his flawless character. Text 21. The Lord enjoyed his pastimes, both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Text 22. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but alas, his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. Text 23. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Text 24. Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties, and thus, as decided by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Text 25. A few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasa, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave, but remained in Dwarka. Text 26. After arriving there, all of them took baths, and with the water of this place of pilgrimage, they offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the Brahmanas in royal charity. Text 27. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Text 28. Thereafter, they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the Brahmanas. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 3rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. Devasikti Mataji. Hare Krishna. So we can go through some context and then go through the rest of the verses for today. It's a wonderful section. Hope you're relishing this section. because this is like a preview of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, which is filled with nectarian pastimes, sweet pastimes of Krishna. So, like overall context is that this is a conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. Sorry, before Maitreya Muni and Vidura conversation comes, it's a conversation between Vidura and Uddhava. So, Vidura met Uddhava first, and then next couple of chapters afterwards, he will meet Maitreya Muni. So when he met Uddhava, he asked several questions, to asking the welfare about Krishna, welfare about Balaram, welfare about different Yadus, like that. So in response to that, Uddhava became ecstatic, remembering Krishna's pastimes. Initially, he told some pastimes in different sequence, random sequence, and then later on, he started to describe in the previous chapter all the pastimes, not all the pastimes, some of the key pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. And then after the in this chapter, we started seeing how he described the pastimes of Krishna after he left Vrindavan and went to Madura. So that's what we saw yesterday's conversation. And then now today's section will go towards transition from Krishna's pastimes in Madura to Krishna's pastimes while he was in Dwaraka. Of course, while Krishna is in Dwaraka, there are some pastimes he performed when he went to Hastinapur also. So those also are described accordingly in this rest of the chapter that we'll cover today. So basically, Uddhava is remembering the wonderful pastimes of Krishna in connection with his devotees. That is what is the context now. I will use text 15, it starts. Let me just confirm. Yeah, text 15. Okay. So text 14, before we go to today's verse, I'll briefly touch the yesterday's verse. Yesterday's verse was the 14th verse, where after Mahabharata war, all the people who are burdened to earth were destroyed. That's what 14th verse is talking about. But then there's still great strength of Yadu dynasty, which may be an unbearable burden, like that we heard in the last verse yesterday. Of course, the main point that was shared in the purport by Prabhupada yesterday was it was not a burden of misery, but burden of love. Like for a parent, child is not a burden. Mother is happy to carry child, even though child is very heavy as she grows. But similarly, it is also very happy as long as we are supportive of Krishna's mission, which is to understand our purpose of life and engage in devotion service. So then Earth is also happy to bear us like that. That's what one of the main thing was discussed in yesterday's verse. Now, that verse is important because this is transitioning from today's verse, 15th verse. The transition is going on to briefly touch on Maushala Lila. That means briefly touch on how Yadu dynasty was according to the desire of Krishna. That is important point that comes repeatedly. According to the desire of Krishna or will of Krishna, how Yadu dynasty prepared to disappear from this planet. So that is what is discussed. That's why Yadus being burdened like that is described. We'll discuss that more today towards the end of this chapter. Of course, the details of this are wonderfully described in 11th canto. In fact, so wonderfully described with big purports, indicating the commentary from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, commentary from Jiva Goswami, like that purports are given in the 11th canto. So, for the disappearance pastime of Yadu dynasty. But we will touch some of this here today based on the purports of Srila Prabhupada here also. So, basically going to 15th verse. So, how the Yadu dynasty quarreled among themselves by influenced by intoxication is described here. And so, I will briefly mention the pastime. Interestingly, the flow of the verses goes in different order. The actual pastime is described in the verse from 24th onwards today. So basically what this is saying is the conclusion of that itself, which is, so to make it easy for the storyline to come through, I will describe the pastime here. So we'll breeze through the verses in the later portion of the chapter. So basically what happened is, by Krishna's will, okay, by Krishna's desire, because Krishna wanted it so. What happened? Yadu dynasty, especially some of the sons of Krishna, including Samba, they all went when the sages arrived at that place, they all went to the sages, and Samba was dressed like a lady with a sari like that, and then he was pretending as if he is pregnant. So then they asked the sages, "Can you please tell us? This lady is worried whether she's going to have a boy, son, or a daughter. Can you please predict?" Like that, they went to approach the sages. So we'll go into the nuances of this pastime to understand the lessons in a few verses also, as the verses unfold today. But I want to describe the overall storyline. So, Yadu Dynasty princess went to the sages, acting like as if Samba is like a lady like that. But the sages are very powerful, especially in those days. The sages and brahmanas were very powerful, so they could understand what these guys are doing. They're not naive, or they did not have the worldly knowledge like that somebody may think. But they understood what they need to understand by the Krishna's mercy. So they understood, and they actually cursed them, saying that yes, this lady will give birth to a Mausha. That means the Gada like that. So Gada means like club that Balram uses, right? Like that. So, so he shall give birth to a Mausha, Gada, and that will become the destruction of your entire dynasty. Like that, they curse. So obviously, this curse is because of the Krishna's will, and there are several lessons to learn from here. But we'll discuss that as the verses come. So then they went back to their kingdom, Dwaraka, and they went back to the king Ugrasena and reported this incident to them. And King Ugrasena thought, wow, what do we do? So with this club then, if it becomes a cause of destruction of our dynasty, so he, without consulting Krishna, he ordered them to powder this gada or club, and then put the powder in the sea. So they did that, but toward the end, they left one piece of the club that could not be grounded anymore, like that. So they threw everything in the sea. So basically, what happened was the powder that was thrown in the sea later came onto the Prabhasha Kshetra, and they all became like a sharp trees kind of things. And then also the small piece that was not grounded fully, that was swallowed by fish. And later there's a fisherman by name Jara, that was will not come here, that will come in 11th canto, took that sharp piece of stone or a club, thinking that, okay, let me use it for arrow, end of the arrow, like head of the arrow, like that. So then later on, these Yadu dynasty princes, and rather many of the Yadu dynasty members come here. We'll discuss the details in the later chapter of the verses here. They all came to Prabhashidra. They all engaged in intoxication with the permission of Brahmanas. And then they fighted amongst each other with the canes that grew there on the shore of the sea. And then they killed themselves, and then they disappeared from this planet. Again, this is all by Krishna's will. That's how the emphasis is made in the purports by Prabhupada here also. We'll go through the verses to see more detail on this Leela. So now in this verse, what is being said? That the Yadus themselves quarrel because of intoxication among themselves. Then Krishna is predicting that they will disappear. That's what is going on here. And purport, Prabhupada makes three important points. One is what we were discussing, which is by the will of Krishna only this is happening, not because Krishna is not in control. That's one point. Second thing is the devotees are completely surrendered to Krishna, especially the pure devotees are completely surrendered to Krishna. That's why they can act as instruments in the plan of Krishna. So that's why they're even ready to fight among themselves here. So that only Krishna uses his pure devotees for that purpose, so that they can orchestrate a pastime with several purposes. So now, one of the lesson Prabhupada is emphasizing in this purport is that somebody can be as great as Krishna's own family members, Krishna's own relatives, but doesn't matter. If they offend Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, they should face a consequence. That's what other thing is describing. That means they can never be independent. They're always dependent on Krishna and the laws of nature. And so that's why they are faced through this consequence because they offended Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Another important point Prabhupada is emphasizing, which we discussed earlier, is about the how pure devotees are perfect instruments in the hands of Krishna. That means, according to the desires of Krishna, they cooperate with the desire of Krishna. Like that's the other point of uh, emphasis Prabhupada is making the purport. So now 16th verse, Lord Krishna thinking about the welfare of everyone, and he established Maharaj Yudhishthira as the emperor of the whole world, so that the ideal of administration can be demonstrated to everyone. The king is meant to be a perfect representative of Krishna, engaged in devotion service to Krishna. So that way they can rule the kingdom properly and guide the people to the perfection of life properly. That's what we are hearing from text 16. Now going to text 17. So how Krishna protected the descendant of Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is Parikshit Maharaj, in the womb of Uttara. We heard this in first canto itself, how Uttara, who was the mother of Parikshit Maharaj and wife of Abhimanyu, came running towards Krishna, asking him to protect the womb, protect the baby in the womb, which is Parikshit Maharaj. When Aswadhama released an arrow, Brahmastra, to kill that last descendant of the dynasty. But Krishna didn't want that to happen because Krishna wanted a devotees to rule the planet always. So for that purpose, this verse describes Krishna protected that baby Parikshit Maharaj by giving his darshan like that. So the purport Prabhupada is emphasizing that Krishna actually gave a second body to Parikshit Maharaj in the womb, uh, and uh, and he also gave his darshan to the Lord to encourage him and gave him complete protection by his omnipotency. So basically, there are many things described here nicely. One is Krishna is omnipotent. That means he can do anything like that. Number one. Number two, Krishna can simultaneously be in outside, visible to all the Pandavas, and go inside the womb of Uttara to protect the child Parikshit Maharaj also. That is second aspect being mentioned in the purport. Third aspect is we are not this body, we are a spirit soul. So even if there is external body, something happens to external body, we'll get a new body. In this case, Krishna gave a second body to the baby in the womb itself. But normally we die and we take shelter in another womb and take another body through that process like that, to the process of transmigration. That's another point Prabhupada is making the purport. But the key point is Krishna protects his devotees always. That is a key point highlighted here. Now going to the text 18. Text 18, it describes how Krishna encouraged Maharaj Yudhishthira to perform Ashwamedha sacrifices. These are Vedic rituals for the benefit of all the society and the kingdom, all the people in the society like that. So Krishna basically engaged Yudhishthira Maharaj in the righteous activities of the Vedic rituals like that. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj's greatness is mentioned in this verse as is constantly following Krishna and is protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. So he is not only protected by Krishna, he also enjoyed his stay in this material world also, Maharaj Yudhishthira. That's another aspect is being mentioned here, while being assisted and served by other Pandavas like that. In this purport, Prabhupada makes one point, which he repeats again in another verse later on in this chapter also, which is the purpose of material creation. Purpose of material creation is not just we enjoy and be merry and don't worry about tomorrow, don't worry about what happens after this life. Purpose of this creation is for conditioned souls like us to revive our eternal relationship with Krishna. And so we can go back to the spiritual world. That is the main purpose of the mission of life, purpose of life, and purpose of this material creation also. That's what Prabhupada is emphasizing here. And for doing that, a perfect king is beneficial. So that a perfect king, who is a perfect king? Perfect king is one who is following the orders of Krishna, following the orders given in scriptures, maintaining the religious principles given in scriptures, and is a perfect devotee himself. So when you have such a great ruler, it makes it easy for people to practice Krishna consciousness or devotion service so that they can perfect their life. That's what Prabhupada is emphasizing in this purport. Now going to the 19th verse. So it's mentioned until now Yudhishthira Maharaj's enjoyment is mentioned and is protected by his brothers and Krishna is mentioned. Now here this verse describes how Krishna enjoyed his life in the city of Dwarka strictly in conformance with Vedic customs of society. That means you need not enjoy. I don't care about scriptures. I don't care about religious principles. I don't care about Brahmanas, Vaishnavas. I'll just enjoy whatever way I want. No, not like that. He followed the Vedic scriptures to uh, enjoy this life like that is described. One point. But more importantly, Krishna demonstrated by his personal example the principles of detachment and knowledge also. Prabhupada, this purport is very beautiful. Prabhupada writes, elaborates on these 2 points. How, what is the real perfection of life, or what is the real knowledge means? Real knowledge means understanding that we are not this body, that we are a spirit soul. And then the purpose of this life is meant to engage in devotion service so we can perfect our life and go back to spiritual world and enjoy eternal life of happiness and bliss. When we understand that principle properly, that is the real knowledge. Actually, real knowledge means not just knowing theoretically, but getting the realization. That helps. What helps in realizing that fact for us? Not only reading scriptures, but also doing our regular practice of sadhana every day, chanting our rounds very nicely every day, attentively, as much with as much attention we can muster, and fixed number of rounds every day at least, and then also by following the orders of a spiritual master. Through these things, we can develop realization. So by chanting, by engaging in our own sadhana, and by engaging in some service for the mission of the Lord, like helping other people, whether it's through helping others chant, helping others read Prabhupada books, or distributing Prabhupada books. Through this way, we can help in the mission of the Lord. Through that way, we can actually change from knowledge to realization. So that's one point Prabhupada is emphasizing in purport. And when somebody is in that knowledge that my mission of life is not just to have some enjoyment for this body currently, but there's a higher purpose to this life, then such a person, even while enjoying in the material world with whatever necessities they come, necessities are there, even fulfilling some of the needs of the senses, but they're always engaged in detachment also. That means they understand this sense enjoyment is not all in all. It's just temporary. That is a point made in the purport by Srila Prabhupada here also. So the key points here is Krishna, by his personal example, showed that it's important to follow the Vedic regulations even while pursuing the enjoyment for senses, number one. And that sense enjoyment should not become all in all for our life. That means that is not the whole aim of life. Our whole aim of life should be to attain devotion service of Krishna and to go back to spiritual world. And that means we need to leave some time, energy, enthusiasm in our life to pursue the purpose of our life, not just consume whole day with sense enjoyment only. That's the point Prabhupada is emphasizing in the purport here. And Krishna demonstrated that through his life like that. In the next verse is described how Krishna had a transcendental body, and which is the residence of Lakshmi Devi, goddess of fortune, and his beautiful, gentle and sweet smiling face, and his nectarian words and his flawless character. He exhibited himself in such a way that it gives pleasure to all the residents of Dwaraka by his sweet and gentle smiling face and his nectarian words and his flawless character also is described here. So in the purport, Prabhupada is describing that um, two points mainly. One is that Lord's body is transcendental and is detached from matter. That's one point is making. Second point is making is that somebody may think, okay, if you're detached from matter, that means there's no enjoyment left for anybody, including Krishna, like that. So, but Prabhupada is clarifying that Lord Krishna was enjoying with his transcendental body in transcendental way. He can still enjoy uh, in terms of his internal Shakti, internal potency, or internal energy. Though he's detached from the matters of external energy, but is enjoyed with the transcendental bliss of in engaging in the internal potency. Like in the coming verses we see, in the next verse we'll see how we can go to the next verse, 21st verse. Krishna enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and also in higher planets also, especially in the association of Yadus. Yadu dynasty is described. That means even though he's experiencing detachment, he also enjoyed his pastimes like that through the internal potency. Specifically, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with queens in Dwaraka also is described in this verse. So, uh, Prabhupada writes in the purport that Krishna enjoyed this transcendental pleasure in the company or association of his pure devotees. That is the point made by Prabhupada in the purport. So that may also he says that the queens are none other than the expansions of Srimati Radharani and the gopis of Vrindavan. So now text 22, this also glorifying the perfect detachment Krishna is exhibited in his life itself as an example for us. So he says, even though Krishna engaged in household life for many, many, many years, but at last his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. That means he left the home, left the Dwaraka at the end of his life. That is showing an example for us as householders who are engaged in Grihastha life, that we need to aspire for such a situation, not always thinking about sons, grandsons, great grandsons like that, but we should dedicate our life to spiritual life also while taking care of the family nicely. So that's what Krishna is personally teaching through his personal example. That one should not remain in his household life throughout his life like that. That's the point being made. So this is hinting towards Vanaprastha ashram and sannyasa if you are qualified only, of course. So that's what this verse is purport Prabhupada is hinting towards Vanaprastha ashram like that. So now Prabhupada also is pointing out that even though he's detached from household life, but is never detached with his transcendental personal associates of Krishna, like that is describing, like Rukmini Devi. So he's always enjoying the association of pure devotees, like that Prabhupada writes in purport. Now going to text 23, everyone is trying to enjoy the senses under the influence of Mahamaya. But if there's a devotee, if somebody engages in devotion service, they can only understand the activities of Krishna nicely. That's what this verse is talking about. So only when we engage in devotion service or bhakti, then we can understand the difference between Krishna's activities and activities of materialists who are not performing devotion service like that. There's a difference between those two activities. Like that, Prabhupada is writing in the purport. Yeah. Another point is, if somebody is not engaged in bhakti and they're only engaged in sense gratification, then they cannot understand how Krishna is above the modes of nature, how Krishna is controlling the modes of nature, how Krishna is not coming under the modes of nature control like that. They will not understand. That's the other point being made in the purport. Of course, when we perform devotion service, Krishna will give us mercy to understand these aspects. That's the other point Prabhupada is making the purport. Now, text 24 onwards is going into some indication of the Maushala Lila, how Krishna's Yadu dynasty started to disappear from this planet. What are the circumstances that Krishna orchestrated for his Yadu dynasty to disappear? That's what is coming up in these verses now. In the 24th verse, once upon a time, great sages were angry by the sportive activities of princes, like we discussed. So, which is the princess tried to act like one lady is One is Samba is pregnant, like that, right? That is what is describing. And as desired by the Lord, the sages curse them. This is the key point. Prabhupada's emphasis in the purport, two main points. One is sages are Brahmanas. Brahmanas are supposed to be calm and peaceful. How come they became angry even though Yadu princesses made this mistake? They tried to cheat them, saying that this lady Samba is pregnant. How can the Brahmanas become angry? Somebody may get the doubt. Prabhupada is clarifying this show of anger is by the will of Krishna, like that. That is one point Prabhupada makes in purport. Another important point Prabhupada makes is that we should be very careful in dealing with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, especially. Of course, with anybody also. We should always respect others and not offend others, especially with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas also. So that's what Prabhupada is making a point, that we can never commit offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord. In fact, I was appreciating this point yesterday when I was hearing about 10 offenses to the holy name. This is very, very important. When we make offenses to devotee, which is also offense to the holy name, then nobody can save us. Even if we make some offense or mistake in doing devotion service accidentally, holy name can protect us by chanting. But if we make offense to holy name, nobody is there to protect us. The example Haripasha Prabhu gives is that if we are taken to a court because of a criminal offense, then judge can relieve us, saying that, okay, let us leave him. It's okay. This is a small thing, like that. But if we make an offense to judge himself, then nobody is there to protect us. Similarly, if we make an offense to Krishna and holy name, there's nobody who can protect us in this world, out of this world also. So that's the point we need to be careful about. Now, 25th verse. So, bewildered by Krishna is described. So, you notice there's a key phrase in each verse that is describing is happening by the will of Krishna, by personal influence of Krishna, like that is being described. By bewildered by Krishna, all the Yadu dynasty descendants, what they did? They went to Prabhashetra. So, Yadu dynasty descendants are of two types primarily. One is those who are eternal associates of Krishna, and those who came from heavenly planets, the demigods who came from heavenly planets also. So the eternal associates of Krishna stayed back in Dwaraka to live to their eternal abode. But those who are demigods who appeared in the Yadu dynasty, they came to Prabhashetra on the order of Krishna, on the plea of Krishna, on the recommendation of Krishna, that they should go and do some pious activities to counteract the curse of Brahmanas, like that. Krishna encouraged them. So they all went to the Prabhashetra. That's what is being described in 25th verse. 26th verse, after they went there, what did they do? They did the Vedic rituals of taking bath and offering water to the forefathers, and they gave charity of cows to Brahmanas, like that. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. So we should engage in these Vedic rituals. Of course, if we are perfectly Krishna conscious, then we don't need to engage in all these things. But until we become that, we should follow the religious principles nicely and engage in principles of religion nicely, including going to pilgrimage places, like that. But of course, the key point is whether we stay here or go to pilgrimage place. Key point is stay in devotion service always. That is the key principle Prabhupada is highlighting in the purport. Going to 27th verse, the Brahmanas were given different kinds of charities described. And this verse and next verse, Prabhupada's emphasis is that the charity is meant to be given to people like Brahmanas and Vaishnavas who are trying to cultivate higher spiritual life for themselves and guiding others also. So that is the best charity we can give. Number one. Number two, it's a duty for people like Kshatriyas and Vaishyas or Grihasthas and Grihasthas to support other castes and orders of society, especially Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, because they are busy in cultivating spiritual life for themselves and others. So they don't have time to earn money. So we are meant to give charity to support them. So this is how the different castes and orders of society can come together, cooperatively work together. So Brahmanas will benefit us by giving their instructions and association, and we benefit them by taking care of the material needs through our money and charity, like that. That's the points Prabhupada is making this purport. And the last purport is beautiful. Prabhupada makes that perfection of human life can be attained by three things. Prabhupada summarizes. One is by protecting cows, by maintaining the Brahmanical culture. Brahmanical culture, you notice. That means principles of Brahmanical culture, including spreading of Krishna consciousness, and then becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. So by through this, we can perfect our human life. That means we're doing our sadhana and seva to perfect our own life to become pure devotee. And we're also taking care of cows. We're also maintaining Brahmanical culture, including taking care of Brahmanas. That's the way we can perfect our life. And Prabhupada, interestingly, majority of this purport, he takes it a point to emphasize about prasadam, how it is so important. 2 points Prabhupada makes. One is very important, whatever we're eating, we offer to Krishna first in gratitude and with some devotion, whatever we can muster. Offer everything we eat first to Krishna in our home and then accept it as remnants. That is one important point Prabhupada emphasizes in this purport. Second point is, what are foodstuffs this Yadu dynasty members offered to Brahmanas here in the Prabhashetra were first offered to Krishna. So they gave it as prasadam. So that's another important principle we need to practice. We should not ideally, except when we are giving as an offering for somebody's deities in their home, in which case it's okay to give unoffered food, because that way we'll participate in their devotion service also to their deities. In that case, it's okay. But otherwise, we should give prasadam when we're distributing to anybody. We should offer to our deities and then give that remnants only to others. That way, we're pleasing the Lord and we're benefiting others through the prasadam or mercy of the Lord, like that. That's the important principle we need to cultivate in our life. So the Prabhupada ends the whole chapter and the last purport of this chapter with the point that everything, all this thing happened. Brahmanas, Yadus behaving like this improperly with Brahmanas by cheating and lying as their lady, like that, and Brahmanas cursing like this, and then Yadus going to Prabhashetra and then drinking intoxication and fighting among themselves. All this orchestrated by will of Krishna. Of course, there are detailed points about this, why this happened in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Two essential points I'll make. One from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which he says some of the Yadu dynasty members became proud of the being, oh, see, we're Krishna's family members, like that. So they became engaged in, bewildered and engaged in uh, not a religious activity, like that. That is one thing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, because of being proud. That is one point Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes. That is one of the reason Krishna orchestrated this. And Jiva Goswami says the opposite almost. Basically, he says, actually, these are pure devotees of the Lord. Many of them are eternal associates of the Lord. So, if Krishna lives before them, they will be drawn with love of separation. So, they cannot bear that Krishna disappeared from their vision and their association. So, in that consciousness, they will trample the whole people in the world, like that. They cannot stay in the world without Krishna's association. So that's why Krishna orchestrated this, like that Jiva Goswami talks about it. There are lots of points, like 8, 9 points mentioned in the 11th canto. We'll come to that later on. But these are key points from that section. Of course, we heard about the other lessons we can learn from this pastime. So that's how this chapter ends, and we'll continue with the disappearance pastime of Yadu dynasty in the next chapter. That's how it continues. So we'll end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's offer obeisance to all the devotees of the Lord. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Thank you so much, devotees. Hare Krishna.